Rogan Josh or Rogan Ghost as it is written is actually from Kashmir. Well, we all know that, and I've shown you Mutton Rogan Josh in the past. Well, the link is there in the description box below. If you want to make that, of course, by all means, go all out and make that. But today is Rogani Murg or Rogani Chicken. While it's kind of the same recipe with the change of meat, just for the uninitiated, well, a Rogan Josh or Kashmiri food on its whole, if I can say that, is made in two distinct ways. The Kashmiri Pandit style and the Kashmiri Muslim style. Well, the difference here is in the use of ingredients. Of course, the Kashmiri Pandit style uses a lot of hing and Asafoetida, and for that quotient, the Kashmiri Muslims use a lot of onions and garlic. Let's begin with actually making a Kashmiri spice mix, which is called the Kashmiri Ver. Of course, it has a few ingredients. Let's begin one at a time. The first one is Kashmiri Red Chilli Powder, and this one is outstanding for color, of course. The next ingredient is saunt. Well, saunt is dry ginger powder, and this is one of the core 5 ingredients of a Kashmiri Ver. In goes saunt. To this, I'm adding in the third core ingredient, and that is soft fennel seeds. Along with this, Asafoetida or hing. I'm adding in a Garam Masala. Well, this is completely optional. Well, the next 3 ingredients are ingredients that you can either blend or grind into this, or you can give a tadka to begin with. What you can do is heat oil or heat mustard oil and then temper it like we normally do. But what I like is grinding it into a nice powder at this stage. Of course, out of the 3 ingredients, the first one is black cardamom, the second one is green cardamom with the shell with the skin, and thirdly, there is bay leaf. Well, the garam masala, of course, also has cinnamon, but I am also adding in an inch of cinnamon here. Let's grind this into a fine powder. With this, our spice mix is done and ready. Now this actually gets transferred onto a plate or a platter, and this is a technique that's done in most Kashmiri homes in the month of May, because they kind of make this for the entire year and they stock it. Well, most homes in India make their spice mixes once a year, so do we in our homes, but this one is a very typical Kashmiri spice. Like I'm saying again, it's called Ver. You grind this into a powder and then you add in some oil, and you need to shape this into a lemon-sized ball to begin with, and then we'll go further. Bring all of this together. Do not overdo the oil because you do not want a paste. You want a nice lumpy ball which is dry yet moist at the same time. Oil again is a natural preservative, and that kind of helps in keeping the spices and its flavor intact for the entire year. Kashmir, of course, has a harsh climate through the year. It's either extremely sunny or it's extremely cold, and this is something that just helps perfectly all through the year. Well, here if you see, the masala has moistened beautifully, and now it's all coming together into a beautiful lump. The next step is to convert this into a log shape, or what you can do is, of course, because we're doing it in a very tiny quantity, of course, we can use a ball as such. But otherwise, if you're making this in a huge quantity, you need to convert this into a log. You need to sun dry that. You need to slice that. So you get these nice little discs, and then you kind of create a hole in the center and you twine it. When you twine it, it becomes like a garland, and that again gets hung all across the homes in Kashmir, and that's very peculiarly in the summers. Well, also, when I visited last, I saw a lot of fruits and vegetables also being sliced and garlanded in their homes, on the terrace especially, and that's used all through the year. Well, here if you see, it's become like a nice disc. You need to dry this, but before drying, what's important is to create a depression like so, right in the center. What happens with that is when you dry this, like I'm saying again, you just pass a rope and you hang this through the year. With this, your Kashmiri Ver is done and ready. Well, Rogan Josh is a recipe that actually came into Kashmir through the silk route, which is also known as a Resham Rajmarg. Well, over the years, this then became part of the Kashmiri Vazwan or the Grand Kashmiri Thali. Let's proceed further with cooking it. Of course, you need to take a pot or cauldron. You can take an earthenware. That's a complete personal choice. I have seen a lot of Kashmiri friends cooking in an aluminium pot. If you think you can do that, please by all means invest in a deg or a degchi and go all wild. Now, the next step to proceed is actually two ways. One is you can either begin with ghee, which is clarified butter, or you can begin with mustard oil. Well, my personal preference is ghee. You can take your call. Let's add in ghee. And this needs to be generous because again, Rogan Josh is a recipe which has oil floating. That fat or ghee which actually kind of precipitates on the top is Rogan, and that's where the name Rogan Josh comes from. Next is the Kashmiri ware that goes into the clarified butter. Now there are again two things here. Of course, if you're making this fresh, this is going to end up looking like a paste like so. But otherwise, if you're using this in its dry form or its powder form, then what you need to do is just kind of dilute this in some water, and that's about it, and add in that entire spice liquid. Let's begin with the addition of Kashmiri ware. Like I said earlier, if you're not adding in the cardamoms and the bay leaf earlier, you can begin the tempering with those and then add in the ware. Let's mix all of this on low flame. You do not want this to burn. And with this, I'm also adding in the whisked curd. Just whip this lightly, break the lumps, and there it goes into the tempering. Mix all of this well. Well, the Rogan Josh that you get in most hotels and restaurants is actually quite a diluted version of this, because that begins with onions and tomatoes and spices and things like that. All they want is the curry to look nice, bright and red in color, and that's their version of a Rogan Josh, but that's commercial completely and that's not real at all. This is the recipe for Rogan Josh, which is absolutely from the heartland of Kashmir. The only twist here is instead of a meat, I'm adding in Murg, which is chicken. Let's do that. Well, no marination, nothing, just the pieces of meat. Well, I personally like thigh and leg, so I'm using that. But of course, by all means, you can also use the entire chicken. Let's give this a good mix. You see, it's become nice, bright and red in color. And this is all natural because this is just the power and goodness of good quality Kashmiri chilies. Well, of course, Kashmiri chilies are used in this recipe, but the red bright color comes also from an ingredient called ratan jog. Well, this is actually the bark of a tree, and that bark is collected, and the first thing that actually goes in the tadka. Remember, bay leaf and the cardamom? Instead of that, you need to add in ratan jog, and that's where the oil becomes nice, bright red in color, and that eventually starts floating on top, and that is known as Rogan. Let's add in water, and this one is a thin curry, so be generous with water. Then you finally give it a stir, cover this, and allow this to cook for 15 to 18 minutes or till the chicken is wonderfully cooked, and this one is on medium flame. Well, Rogan Josh, if you've noticed by now, is a combination of two words, Rogan and Josh. Well, Rogan in Persian or in Urdu means something which is fiery, something which is red, and something which is oily. And Josh, of course, for all of us is passion. Well, passion denotes something which is hot, something which is fiery, something which is spicy. So this one is, of course, spicy, it's oily, it's fiery, it's hot, and it's fantastic. With this, your Murg Rogani is done and ready. Off goes the flame, and this needs to be covered and kept just like that for at least 10 minutes. What happens in that case is all the oil that we've actually used for cooking kind of comes on top, covers the surface, and that's where you have the most amazing Rogan. Well, I always keep saying this, but I actually want you to see this today. Well, this is how the curry looks now. And then when you actually keep it covered, I'll show this again after 10 minutes. It's been 10 minutes and that's how the Rogan looks now. Well, this is nice, fiery, bright red and absolutely the way we're looking at. Let's serve this, and do not forget to actually scoop in some Rogan and put it right on top. I'll show you how. With this, your Rogani Murg or Rogani Chicken is done and ready. Make this for your family and friends. You can serve this with pav, you can serve this with naan, roti, rice, whatever you like. On that note, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to get curried.